Think about the last time someone rejected you. Maybe it was a breakup. Maybe it was a friend who stopped calling. Maybe it was a job you really wanted and didn't get. Do you remember how it felt? Not emotionally, physically. The tightness in your chest, the heaviness behind your eyes, the way your body felt like something had actually been taken from it. You probably told yourself it was just emotions, just feelings, just something you had to push through. But here's what no one ever told you. Your brain wasn't being dramatic. It was in real pain, and science can prove it. In this video, you're going to discover something that will change the way you see yourself and the way you treat yourself forever. You're going to find out why emotional pain registers in the exact same regions of your brain as physical pain. You're going to understand why heartbreak, rejection, and loss are not just in your head, they are neurological events with real, measurable consequences in your body. You're going to learn why some people feel emotional pain more intensely than others. And at the end, I'm going to share with you the most important thing this science means for the way you talk to yourself when you're hurting. If you've never heard of this channel before, welcome to Human Mind. Every week, we take the most fascinating questions about why you think, feel, and behave the way you do, and we answer them with science, with honesty, and with the kind of compassion your brain actually deserves. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and let's get into it. It started with a simple question. A researcher named Naomi Eisenberger was sitting in a brain imaging lab at UCLA in the early 2000s.
She was studying what happens in the brain when people feel socially excluded, and she had a wild idea. What if social pain, the pain of being left out, rejected, ignored, wasn't just a metaphor? What if it was real pain? Not poetic pain, not emotional discomfort. Real, neurological, measurable pain. The same kind your brain registers when you burn your hand on a stove. To test this, she designed one of the most elegant experiments in modern neuroscience. She had participants lie inside an fMRI machine, a brain scanner that tracks blood flow in real time, while they played a simple computer game. The game was called Cyberball. 3 players were tossing a virtual ball back and forth. At first, the other players passed to the participant normally. Then, without warning, they stopped including them. The ball just kept going back and forth between the other 2. The participant was left out, completely ignored, for just a few minutes of a silly computer game. And what Eisenberger saw on those brain scans stopped her in her tracks. The region of the brain that lit up? It was the same region that processes physical pain. The dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, one of the brain's primary pain processing areas, activated just as strongly during social exclusion as it does when someone experiences real bodily injury. Let that sink in. Your brain didn't create a separate system for emotional hurt. It borrowed the same one it already had for physical pain. And that changes everything about what it means to be human and hurting. To toughen up, to not take things personally, to remember that it's just feelings. But now we know something those phrases never accounted for. Feelings aren't just anything. Here's why.
Go back millions of years. Your ancestors didn't survive alone. If you were cast out from your tribe, you didn't just feel bad, you died. No food, no shelter, no protection. Social exclusion was a death sentence, so your brain evolved to treat it exactly like one. It wired social pain directly into the same alarm system that handles physical danger. Because for your ancient ancestors, being rejected by the group was just as dangerous as being attacked by a predator. That wiring is still in you. Every single time someone leaves you on red, every time you're not invited, your brain runs the same ancient alarm, and it is not overreacting. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. The suffering you feel when someone hurts you emotionally, it is not weakness. It is the most human thing about you. After Eisenberger's Cyberball study, something happened in the scientific community. Other researchers started looking at this from different angles, and what they found kept pointing to the same uncomfortable truth. A study published in the journal Science, one of the most prestigious scientific publications in the world, found that participants who reported higher emotional sensitivity to social rejection also showed stronger activation in those same pain regions. In other words, if you feel things deeply, your brain is literally more activated in the areas that process pain. You aren't imagining it. You aren't exaggerating. You are neurologically wired to experience it more intensely. Another study took this even further. Researchers asked participants to look at photos of ex-partners, people who had broken their hearts, and then they asked a different group of participants to hold a hot probe against their forearm.
Both groups went inside the fMRI scanner. Both groups' brains were scanned in real time. The result? The same regions activated, at comparable intensity. Looking at a photograph of someone who left you produces brain activity that looks nearly identical to being burned. Not metaphorically burned, physically burned. When scientists looked at those scans side by side, some of them couldn't tell which was which without checking the labels. The brain doesn't know you're looking at a photo. It doesn't know it's just a memory. It knows it hurts, and it responds accordingly. Have you ever gone through a breakup and noticed that it felt like something was physically missing? Not just sadness, an ache, a craving, almost like hunger, but deeper, like your body was looking for something it couldn't find. That is not a coincidence. Here's what's happening inside you. When you're in a close relationship, romantic, friendship, even with a pet you love, your brain releases a steady stream of neurochemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. These chemicals don't just make you feel good, they become a baseline. Your brain recalibrates around them. It comes to expect them. And when that relationship ends, when that source of neurochemical input disappears overnight, your brain enters something remarkably similar to drug withdrawal. Researchers at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine studied the brains of people who had recently been through unwanted breakups. What they found is that the brain regions activated when these people looked at their ex were the same regions associated with cocaine craving: the ventral tegmental area, the nucleus accumbens. The reward circuitry of the brain was firing, desperately searching for the source of its reward.
And because it couldn't find it, it kept searching. That's why you check their Instagram at 2 in the morning. That's why you replay conversations trying to find where it went wrong. That's why you can't seem to stop thinking about someone, even when you desperately want to. Your brain is in withdrawal from a person, and withdrawal hurts. Not metaphorically, neurologically, chemically, physically, it hurts. Here's where the science gets strange. If emotional pain and physical pain share the same neural pathways, then maybe the same things that treat physical pain could treat emotional pain too. Some researchers decided to test this idea. In a study published in Psychological Science, participants who were given acetaminophen, a common over-the-counter painkiller, for 3 weeks reported significantly lower levels of social pain and emotional hurt during that period compared to participants who took a placebo. Let that land. A painkiller designed for headaches and sore muscles reduced emotional pain. Not because the pain wasn't real, but because the pain was traveling through the exact same biological channels. Now, this is not a recommendation to take painkillers for emotional hurt. That's not what this is about. But what this experiment tells us is profound. It tells us that the emotional pain you feel is not abstract. It is not imaginary. It is not something you should be able to simply think your way out of. It is a biological event happening in your body, and it deserves to be taken as seriously as any other kind of pain you would feel. Imagine telling someone with a broken arm to just decide to feel better. That's what we do when we tell someone grieving a loss to just move on. The brain doesn't recognize the difference.
So why should you? By now you might be asking yourself a question. Why do some people seem to bounce back from rejection quickly, while others, maybe you, feel it so much more deeply? Why does a breakup that takes one person a few weeks to process take another person 2 years? The answer involves several layers. The first is genetics. Research suggests that variations in the mu-opioid receptor gene, the same receptor involved in physical pain sensitivity, affect how intensely people experience social pain. Some people are simply wired to feel rejection more acutely at a neurological level. It is not weakness, it is biology. The second layer is early experience. Your brain learned what to expect from relationships very early in life. If your early attachments were unpredictable, if love sometimes felt safe and sometimes felt dangerous, your nervous system became hypervigilant. It learned to scan constantly for signs of rejection. Because once upon a time, that vigilance was protection. And nervous systems that have been shaped by early insecurity will register social pain more intensely, because they were trained to treat it as a high-stakes signal. Again, not weakness, a learned survival strategy that your brain is still running. The third layer is simply your history of pain. The more times you've been hurt in a particular way, the more sensitized your brain becomes to that specific kind of hurt. It's like a bruise. The first time someone presses on it, it hurts. But press on the same spot enough times, and even the lightest touch becomes unbearable. Your emotional wounds work the same way. And understanding this, truly understanding it, is the first step toward healing in a way that actually works.
This is something many people don't realize. Chronic emotional pain, the kind that comes from prolonged loneliness, grief, toxic relationships, or sustained stress, doesn't just hurt. It has measurable physical consequences. Research has consistently linked chronic social pain to elevated levels of inflammatory markers in the blood, the same inflammation that contributes to cardiovascular disease, immune dysfunction, and accelerated aging. The body isn't keeping score metaphorically. It is keeping score in the cells. People who experience prolonged loneliness show higher cortisol levels, disrupted sleep, impaired immune response. Their bodies behave as though they are under constant physical attack, because as far as the brain is concerned, they are. There is a researcher named John Cacioppo who spent decades studying loneliness. He found that chronically lonely people had DNA that aged faster. Their cells showed more wear, not because of any physical disease, but because the brain and body treated loneliness as a persistent threat, and the stress of that constant threat wore the body down. This is why dismissing emotional pain as just feelings is not just unkind, it is scientifically wrong, and it is dangerous, because the pain you don't address doesn't disappear. It migrates into your sleep, into your immune system, into your blood. Your body was never designed to hold unprocessed pain. It was designed to release it. And when we tell people, when we tell ourselves to just push through and move on, we are asking the body to hold something it was never built to carry. Here's a question I want you to sit with. How do you talk to yourself when you're hurting? What are the words you use?
If you broke your leg, you wouldn't stand on it and tell it to stop being dramatic. You would treat it with care. You would give it time. You would protect it. You would take the pain seriously. Now you know, at a neurological level, that emotional pain deserves exactly the same response. The part of your brain that processes your heartbreak is the same part that processes your injury. It cannot tell the difference. So when you minimize your emotional pain, you are not being strong. You are leaving a wound untreated. And untreated wounds don't heal faster, they fester. Self-compassion, the simple act of treating your own pain with the same kindness you would offer a friend, has been shown in research to actually reduce activity in those pain-processing regions of the brain. Not because it makes the pain disappear, but because the brain registers self-compassion as safety. And when you feel safe, the alarm begins to quiet. Slowly, but it quiets. You don't need to pretend the pain isn't real. You just need to stop making it worse by fighting it. We've built a culture around the idea that strength means not feeling, that the fastest path through pain is to suppress it, to distract yourself, to stay busy, to just decide to be fine. And for a lot of people, that strategy has felt like it worked, for a while. But here's what the research shows. Emotional suppression, the active effort to push down and deny pain, doesn't reduce activity in the brain's pain regions. It actually increases it. In a classic study, participants who were told to suppress their emotional responses while watching distressing footage showed higher, not lower, activation in the brain regions associated with emotional pain.
And the effort of suppressing that pain required so much cognitive energy that their performance on unrelated tasks declined. Trying not to feel doesn't free you from the pain. It just makes you carry it with less capacity to do anything else. Real strength, the kind that neuroscience actually supports, looks different, worthy of your attention. Research on emotional labeling, the act of simply naming your emotion, shows it reduces activation in the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, not by repressing the feeling, but by bringing the rational, observing part of your brain online. You don't have to wallow. You don't have to be consumed by it. You just have to let yourself know you know. That single act of honest acknowledgement tells your nervous system something it has been desperately waiting to hear. That you see it, that you're there, that it doesn't have to keep screaming to get your attention. I want to end with something personal, not about me, because this channel doesn't have a face or a name, but about something that happens to almost all of us at some point. You are hurting. Maybe it's a grief that everyone around you thinks should be over by now. Maybe it's a loneliness you can't explain to people who seem fine. Maybe it's a wound from years ago that somehow still bleeds when you press on it. And someone, a parent, a partner, a friend, even a voice inside your own head, says the thing. I want you to hear what science has to say back to that. Yes, it is in your head. It is in your anterior cingulate cortex. It is in your insular cortex.
It is running through the same neural pathways as every real, physical, legitimate pain a human being can feel. It is in your head the same way a broken bone is in your body. Not imagined, not exaggerated, not a sign of weakness. Real, measurable, documented, proven. Your pain is not a character flaw. It is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that you are human, that your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do, that you have loved and attached and let people matter to you, and that when those things were taken away, your brain sounded every alarm it had, because that's what it was built to do, because you were built to connect. And disconnection, real disconnection, is one of the hardest things a human brain can experience. You are not too sensitive. You are not broken. You are wired for love. And there is nothing in the world more brave than continuing to open yourself to it, even after it has hurt you, even after you know what it can cost. That is not weakness. That is the most extraordinary thing about being human. So here's what I want to leave you with today. The next time you're hurting and you catch yourself saying, "I shouldn't feel this way," I want you to remember what you learned here. Your brain cannot tell the difference between real pain and emotional pain. It treats them the same way, which means you can. Give your emotional wounds the same care, the same patience, the same grace you would give any injury you could see, because they are real, and you deserve to treat them that way. Before you go, I have a question for you. Has there ever been a moment in your life when someone told you that your emotional pain wasn't real, or that you were being too sensitive?
How did that make you feel? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this video helped you understand yourself a little better today, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is carrying pain they've been told isn't real. They deserve to know the truth. Subscribe to Human Mind for more videos that take the science of who you are and turn it into something you can actually use. I'll see you in the next one.